Hi, everyone. I hope that we had a good week last week of recording speeches, getting all our questions asked, and finishing those up, taking a break off of the lecture, and taking a break off of doing a discussion post and a quiz. But however, we're back to it this week. We're going to be going over Chapter 17, Persuasive Speaking, now that we've done Informative Speaking. And you're probably going to look back on this by the time we do persuasive speeches, but let's make sure we get this done early so you guys can understand it now. So informative speeches will probably be, grades will probably be posted next weekend. There's a lot of speeches. I like to go through them, make sure I watch all of them thoroughly. So give me a little bit of time to get those back to you. I'll make an announcement about it later today. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and we can go over Chapter 17. So Chapter 17 is on persuasive speaking. Excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather today, so be kind. And the objective of this chapter is to define the goals of persuasive speaking, develop a persuasive topic and thesis, and build persuasive arguments specifically tailored for your intended audience. So before we were trying to maintain objectivity, today we're actually trying to influence people's opinions to hopefully change. So we're going to go through the 3 forms of rhetorical proofs: ethos, logos, pathos, probably something y'all are already pretty familiar with. And we're going to talk a little bit about logical fallacies and deceptive forms of reasoning. And we're going to talk about a persuasive speech and how to organize it. So the organization patterns for your persuasive speeches moving forward. So persuasion for our class is going to be the process of influencing, changing, or reinforcing others' attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors on a given topic. So the goals of persuasive speaking are influencing attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. Attitudes are going to be evaluations of people, objects, ideas, or events. So your particular attitude, how you feel about those things. Beliefs are how we perceive our reality. Everybody has their own unique reality, and those are influenced by our beliefs, right? Our beliefs are influenced by our perceived reality. And then behavior is the manner in which we act or function. So our reality informs our beliefs, and our beliefs inform how we act. So it's a process. So developing a persuasive topic and thesis. So your topic should be somewhat controversial, just because if you're presenting something that perhaps not a lot of people agree with, and you get people to agree with you, then that's a really, really good show of a persuasive speech. Because if you're giving a persuasive speech on something that everybody already agrees on, we're not really going to see how good a rhetorician you are. So even if it's niche, even if it's not something a lot of people should know about, or not a lot of people know about, like the USAW, like USA Olympic weightlifting should keep doping out of USA regulations for athletes, right? A lot of other countries dope. Or their athletes do. So just something niche, something people don't know about. Create a persuasive topic that's something people might be indifferent about or people might have different opinions about. But it's a really good way to be creative and show what's interesting to you. And your topic should allow you to develop a message that can bring about change in an audience. So a persuasive thesis may be stated as a proposition of fact, a proposition of value, or a proposition of policy, and we'll go over those now. So a proposition of fact is a claim what something is or what something is not. Involve issues that have conflicting evidence or beliefs, and the goal is to align your audience's perception or opinion of the fact with your own. So you're going to present something as a fact, you're going to prove that it's a fact, and the objective is to help the audience or help everybody else believe that this is a fact. A proposition of value. So a proposition of value is something that meets or does not meet a specific standard of goodness or quality of right and wrong. This should reflect your opinion. And the goal here is to align your audience's beliefs or attitudes with your own. So it's rather a question of what we should value as a community or what we should value as a society, as opposed to whether or not something's a fact. And then proposition of policy. So a proposition of policy is to make claims about what goal, policy, or course of action should or shouldn't be pursued. These are commonly used during election campaigns because you're trying to institute a change in policy. So the goal here is to persuade your audience that a current policy is or is not working. Pick one. There are tons of them that either are or not working. If you have a particularly strong opinion on one, like do a proposition to policy. Like that's awesome. Policies on climate change, policies on a million things. So, but before you do this, you need to understand your audience. You need to understand their existing attitudes. You need to understand their backgrounds, the things they believe, where they come from, and those underlying beliefs that reside in them, right? So your audience has existing ideas about whatever topic you choose, right? Social judgment theory, your ability to successfully persuade your audience depends on, one, their current attitudes or dispositions towards your topic, or two, how strongly they feel about their current position. So if you are trying to convince a room full of people that really strongly believe something and they've believed it for a very long time, you're probably not going to be very persuasive. And that has less to do with you and more to do with other people's pre-existing notions. But if the objective is to be persuasive, then we probably are going to want to approach a topic that they might disagree with lightly, right? So understanding your audience and making sure you understand the temperature of the room, like you can read the room, is a really, really important part of persuasive speaking. You need to understand your audience's existing attitudes. Anchor position. You need to understand how strongly the audience members feels about their anchor position, and that will also affect their different latitudes. So how strongly they feel about something, or how likely they are, their latitude on how likely they are to sway on a particular issue. So like if you have people that have been really strong Democrats their entire life or Republicans their entire life, it's probably less likely that you're able to change their opinion than people who have been those political affiliations for longer, right? But we just kind of need to understand that when we walk into a particular scenario where we're trying to persuade people of things. Your audience's existing attitudes. So you need to understand if you have a receptive audience, how large the latitude of acceptance, so how likely they are to agree with what it is you have to say, depending on who you're speaking to. A hostile attitude or a hostile audience, so a large latitude of rejection. So understanding how likely it is that your audience is going to reject your hypothesis or reject what it is you're trying to convince them, or reject the policy change, right? And then a neutral audience, a large latitude of non-commitment. So how completely indifferent your audience is about your particular topic is a really important thing to understand before going into it. You need to understand your audience's readiness to change. So the stages of change model are pre-contemplation, so like pre-thinking about it, not really thinking about it, kind of on the back burner of their mind. Contemplation, really like starting to think about it, preparation, getting ready to make that change, and then the action and whatever steps they take to maintain that choice that they've made. So it's a process. No one changes. Some people change overnight, but they go through all of these steps first. Everybody goes through all these steps when they are changing an opinion of theirs. And the first step is pre-contemplation. So even with your topics, if you're getting people to like begin to have those ideations, like begin to have those kinds of thoughts, that is important. Understanding your audience's needs. I think this might be a typo slide. I'm sorry, y'all. Oh, no, it's not. It just clicks up. Cool. It is first and foremost, we need to understand our audience's needs. Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need to focus on the psychological survival needs. You need to focus on the safety needs, belongingness, social needs, esteem, ego, status needs, and then self-actualizing needs. So understand what needs are most important to your intended audience. And then which leads us to strategies for persuasive speaking. So we have forms of rhetorical proofs. I'm sure you're all really familiar with ethos, logos, pathos, but we're going to go over them just quickly anyway. Ethos, which is really the speaker's qualifications and personality, how really credible they are, if they have a doctorate in the subject matter, things like that. Logos, the nature of the speech's message, whether it's logical, whether there's statistics. And then pathos, you're considering the audience's feelings, you're appealing to emotion, and you're really trying to get them to emotionally identify what it is that you're trying to say. Think of Sarah McLachlan in the Arms of the Angel commercials, the really sad dogs. Like, pulls on your heartstrings, like it gets you, and that is prime pathos example that you'll hear probably every single time. So again, ethos is credibility, character, and character is really important here. because character aligns with goodwill. So if we think of people, and if we think of people are doing what's in our best interest, we're more likely to trust them, and trust builds ethos. So if you can convince your audience that you have their best interests at heart, they are more likely to listen to you. If you can build that up for yourself, if you can create good character, good trust, goodwill, you're an expert in the field, like you are building your ethos. Logos. So Logos uses, too far. Okay, Logos uses inductive reasoning and draws general conclusions based on evidence. So deductive reasoning proceeds from the general to the specific. This is really, really focused on the logic of it all, right? Like logical proofs, syllogisms, enthymemes. So the syllogism would be the major premise, the minor premise, and conclusion, right? So just really understanding what it is that is logical, the statistics, making sure that we're very clear about making sure everything's very logical and not primarily emotional appeals. Emotional appeals are very successful, but they're most successful when they're paired with logical appeals, which then leads us to pathos. Like I said, this should be combined with logical appeal, logical appeals for lasting effect. Pathos is effective, but pathos is only effective while we're experiencing that emotion. So if you want to pair it off well, you got to pair it with something really like compelling logically for it to have an effect over time. Because I know I'll watch commercials and make donations, but if I'm not feeling that emotion, then I'm probably less likely to make that donation, right? Which is really important for us to be aware of, what emotional appeals get to us and how to be aware of those for persuasive tactics in the future. Because every advertisement you ever see is aimed to persuade you through the colors, through the logic, through the sound. Like, it is aimed to target you, and it is aimed to capitalize on you. It is aimed to commodify. So it's really important that we're aware of those emotional appeals. It's really important that we're aware of all these appeals so we can make an informed decision based on the information that we have. All right, and then we want to avoid logical fallacies in the process. Here are just a few of them. There are more that you're going to need to know. These are just some of my favorites. Bandwagoning, just because everybody else thinks something, you should not think it too. Personal attacks, attacking someone's character as opposed to their argument. You shouldn't listen to them because they are dumb. Like, that's a personal attack. Appeal to tradition. We do this because we've always done it, so we don't challenge things that have been done forever just because they've been done. Either or fallacy, false dichotomy. It's really creating like a worldview where there are only two things that are true. One, you want to be in a relationship, and two, you don't. Like, you're creating a false dichotomy in that there's only two options for the person to pick, right? And when there might not only just be two options, like there could be way more than two options. But if someone's creating this two-world option for you, that's a logical fallacy. That's a false dichotomy, because there's always more than two options. And then a red herring, where we try to mislead or distract people from relevant or important information or an important question. So if you distract someone who asked you a question and you distract them with something else. So it's just really like, swoop, like we're going to take a different direction and pretend like my question matters more than yours. So it's just dodging. It's not really ever addressing the answer, and it's putting in distracting information to try to prevent you from answering the question. Which leads us to organizing patterns in persuasive speaking. So there is the problem solution pattern. So you can present a problem, you can present this solution, and then you can present the conclusion. Or alternatively, you can do problem, the cause, and then the solution pattern, and then intro, conclusion, obviously. The reputational organization pattern, you can show all the points opposed to your speech, everything that could, all the oppositional messages. Like, you could talk about, I lost my train of thought. You could talk about the environment and how recycling's hard, but it's easy if you do X, Y, and Z, or just why you should buy an electric car. Like, here are 3 reasons why people say you shouldn't, and I'm going to tell you why those 3 reasons are wrong. And then the comparative advantage pattern. Comparative advantage is you are comparing the 2 options, and you're talking about why one is better, but this is only mostly effective when listeners are familiar with your problem. And this is because you don't want to spend time in the beginning of your speech having to explain it, because then that just eats away at your time. So if it's a topic people are already really familiar with, then I suggest you go with the comparative advantage pattern. Okay, organizational patterns and persuasive speaking. You can do Monroe's motivated sequence. It's a little advanced, but it's basically you get the audience's attention, you get them to focus, you get them to pay attention to you, whether it's with a narrative or something. You address a need in society, a need in people, a need. You satisfy that need. You show listeners how to visualize satisfying that need. You show them what to do, and then you call on them to take action. So that's Monroe's motivated sequence. It's a little bit advanced. I would, if you do it, reach out to me and then we can build your Monroe's motivated sequence pattern speech together. But it's really important for you to know, because there will probably be a question about it on the final. So that's all I want to go over today for persuasive speaking. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Like I said, I'm feeling a little under the weather. I'm going to have your speeches graded by next weekend, so be on the lookout for those. I hope you're all having a good week, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks all. Bye.